Okay, so here are the test subjects today. We got an Opto-X Stiletto in the purple from left to right on the top row. Middle is a orange Champion Max that has been super beat up. I've got a green Metalflake Max, and all that are going to be compared to the new Discmania C-line Glow PD3s. Feel-wise, it feels almost identical to the Champion Max. Just a slight dome to it, but the Metalflake has a bit more dome to it, and that thing is probably the most overstable disc I've thrown. The Stiletto I have not thrown yet, but that thing, from the videos I've seen and the people that I know who have thrown it, are extremely overstable as well. So we'll see how they compare to the Discmania PD3. And then finally, Opto-X Stiletto. Definitely a lot faster disc. Both equally as beefy. Side-by-side comparison, we got PD3 on the left and an old beat-up Champion Max on the right. Dome is pretty close. A little bit more dome on the PD3, not much. And then right here we also have a very overstable Metalflake Max. A little bit more dome. Parting line height might be a little higher on the Metalflake Max. Second one. Okay, coming up on the first one. No surprise, the Metalflake Max, which was very overstable. Didn't get quite as far as the others. The Stiletto got a pretty good move on it. It was hyzer the whole way. It had more stability than my throws with the PD3. So the Stiletto definitely went further, but it has a solid 2 speeds faster than both the Maxes and the PD3s. The Champ Max, the orange one, was a very low line and it skipped a lot, but it went a little further. Stability wise, that is definitely the least stable of the 5. Here's first one and then the second one. The first PD3 did have a little bit more height to it, and like the Champ Max, the second PD3 had a little low skippy shot. I don't think any of them went much more than 300 feet. Tombstone. That didn't work. Immediately came out of that anhyzer. None of them are going very far at all. held a little bit longer before coming out, but it still fought out real good. Alright. Wind stiffened up a little bit. It's solid 15 mile an hour. So this is perfect. Held pretty good into that wind. It wasn't too bad at all. Alright, so I was giving those guys some pretty good ante to a little bit of a headwind. It died off a little bit and picked back up. The first PD3 that I threw had a solid 10 to 15 mile an hour headwind. Wasn't bad, but just enough to straighten out a disc. It didn't turn over ever. It just held that straight line with that anti-release and then fought out. Second PD3 did end up fighting out a little early, but the wind died off a little bit. It couldn't have been more than 10 miles an hour. The Stiletto, it was high and a little nose up, but it never had much of a headwind. Same with the Metalflake Max and the Champ Max initially. So wind's kind of coming up and down a little bit. We'll take a look at the grouping here. It looks like it was pretty good, pretty close. So here I am about 40 feet, I guess, away from where I threw from. And there we've got the green Metalflake, the Champ Max, orange one's right underneath it, and then the Tombstone Stiletto. Like I said, they didn't have as much headwind, so they kind of fought out a little earlier. This is the first PD3 that I threw. It held into that solid stiff headwind that we had, and it ended up catching the trees and dropping right when it was fighting out. So it definitely had some fight in it. Definitely overstable, but ended up getting caught up a little bit by the tree before it really had a chance to finish. Probably pretty close to where the Stiletto was. And then this guy held a long ways. It had a little bit of headwind. I felt like I got over on it pretty good, so I gave it a pretty good snap, and I still don't think it went maybe just 300. Not too bad. Here's where the Stiletto, Champ Max, and Metalflake Max all kind of fought out and dumped out. So these three here were a little nose up and didn't have much headwind, so they fought out a lot earlier. Alright guys, so some final thoughts on the PD3. The Glow C-line PD3, it's basically a Max clone. I feel like it's less stable than the Metalflakes and that Opto-X Stiletto I was kind of comparing it to. But with that being said, these all fall under the stupid overstable category. Things like those Z-Flex machetes, the Maxes, even the Criminal and Opto-X Stiletto, I mean, you name it, Nuke OS, those are all in the stupid stability section of anyone's bag. Nobody can throw those. I mean, they're meant to be dumpy, overstable discs. All of them fit that role very, very well. But the thing about the PD3 is, because it's a little less stable, I find it's a little more workable. I was able to actually crank it on Anheuser and get it to hold for a little while before it ended up dumping. So I would compare it to some of the flat top Firebirds that people have been throwing for years. The stability of it had a good kind of a gummy, almost softer flight plate, and I found that it was pretty comfortable to throw. It wasn't sharp, had a nice feel to it. I've always been partial to the Maxes, so that's something that I've thrown for the better part of 8 years now. So, you know, who knows, maybe it'll find my way into my bag. We'll see. It's a little easier to come across something in production than finding some of the older Maxes. I'm not a huge fan of the Star Maxes that they've been coming out with. They're really domey and not quite as stable as as I'd like, and the PD3 is definitely more stable than some of the more recent Star Maxes that I've seen come out from Innova's store. So, you know, it might end up being something that I end up bagging just for simplicity's sake, to be able to find more backups and find them easier. But who knows? We'll see what happens with that.